At the exact same time I was streaming Silver Surfer, I was also streaming this game. It's another modern game out on the PS5, considered to be hard as nails. And one of you out there, one of my viewers, selected this game for me to play. It's a game about freaking Pinocchio. Pinocchio, guys. Pinocchio. It's Lies of P. Now, I'm just going to say this. I need you to listen. Those of you that are already fans of this game and you're just watching this review to like bolster your love of Lies of P. I liked Lies of P, okay? But my experience with this game is going to be different than most people in the world. I live streamed this game once a week for 3 months, okay? I didn't have any opportunities outside of that to experiment. I took advice from the chat, who is full of trolls, okay? But they're the ones that gave me the advice on builds and strategies. I got conflicting info from different people. It's just what you do when you stream, okay? So my experience with this is not going to be super normal, but I'm trying to be fair. I will say this is the best Souls-like that I've ever played that is not made by FromSoft. It borrows and it steals all its mechanics from FromSoft and from Dark Souls, like the bonfires, which they call stargazers in this game, and freaking souls, which they call ergo, and it has similar leveling mechanics and build archetypes, and it takes blocking mechanics from Bloodborne and the parry system from Sekiro. I think that's what people told me, but I don't know because I haven't played Sekiro. It does it well, okay? And it can easily pass for a Souls game. And it adds in some other stuff to spice up things like a skill tree, freaking robot arms, an emphasis on throwables, but it is a Souls game at heart, with some variations that I'll get to a little bit later. As for the presentation of this game, it is incredible. Okay, guys, the symphonic score is unbelievable. It is way, 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 way better than I expected. The orchestration is phenomenal. The motifs I heard running through them, because it doesn't really have melody, right? It has motifs that you recognize. Fantastic. I loved the music in this game, and it looks great, and the graphics are absolutely stunning. There are incredible environments, some really cool set pieces, decent to great NPCs. Some of the voice actors were like 10 out of 10. Some of them were like 4 out of 10, like freaking Jiminy Cricket. Yes, Jiminy Cricket is in this game. He's like a robot lantern that hangs from your freaking belt or something. I don't know. I never quite figured it out. And like I said, you're playing as Pinocchio. All right, that's what the P in Lies of P stands for. Now, I've never read the novel, so I don't know if it really is about a steampunk odyssey in a dystopian world full of flipping monsters and alchemists trying to turn everyone into other stone monsters, while men and robots with handlebar mustaches tried to sell me new-fashioned peanut brittle. I also don't know if that's what the game is about either, but it's something like that. It's a lot like a Souls game where the plot is understated and you get your context clues from the item descriptions and the environment around you. This is built the same way, but it's really hard to keep up with that crap while you're streaming. Geppetto's there, and you're trying to turn into a real boy by lying your ass off and killing everything in sight. And there's a mechanic in the game where at certain points you have the choice of telling the truth or lying, and I just lied like all the way through because I thought it'd be funny. That probably led towards me getting the bad ending. I don't know. Now, the inspiration for this game was taken from FromSoft's other games, right? I'm not faulting Lies of P for that, because if you're going to steal from someone, steal from the best, right? I'm also not faulting my experience with the lore of this game, because that's my issue, streaming it, of course. It made it difficult to keep up with what was going on in the game. But I am going to talk to you about some flaws or changes with the gameplay that I don't like. You may actually even like these changes in the soul system, but I personally didn't really jive with them. The first thing that bugged me about the combat in Lies of P is that you can't cancel out of an attack by rolling. In most Souls games, if you go swinging and the enemy comes to attack you, you can roll and it will cancel you out of your attack. That does not happen in this game. Once you hit the button to swing, you are committed. That animation will play out come hell or high water. There's also attack stacking in buffering. So when I play a Souls game and I go up to hit an enemy, and let's say my light swing is R1, I will just hit like R1, 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 just like tap it as fast as I can, and the game will only register the second swing if I press R1 after the first one. So I'm pressing it really quickly, hoping to hit that second swing as soon after the first animation ends as possible. Lies of P doesn't do that. It buffers them. So if you hit swing, 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 the game like just stacks those 3 commands in a row and you can't cancel out of them. And that leaves a lot of opportunity for your enemies to hit you. Now that's my fault. I could have gotten over that and learned to do it better, and I kind of did towards the end of the game. But it took a lot of muscle memory breaking to get over that. In Souls-likes, there's a mechanic called poise, where it's an invisible stat where if you do enough damage to an enemy, it will cancel them out of their attack and like stagger them. I feel like the bosses in Lies of P had so much poise. Even though I was using like the biggest, strongest weapon in the game, the poise breaker essentially, they would just attack straight through my attacks. You sucker punched me in the middle of physically being cut. And that happens constantly in this game. And what drives me crazy is that every enemy attack cancels your attack. So you can really only attack when the coast is completely clear. And I don't like that. Now I know some people are gonna love that. It's a way more tactical way to play than the way I usually play a Souls game, which is just to like turtle up and get as strong as I possibly can and just tank everything. You can't do that in Lies of P. It plays more like Bloodborne. You gotta freaking get in there and you gotta parry. And that's what this game is about. It's about parrying the enemy attacks and counter-attacking. And once I figured that out, I really got into the combat of this a lot more. Now you may say, well, you just had a skill issue. Yeah, obviously. I didn't have any skills playing the game. I'd never played it before. If you played through the game 9 times, you're probably really good at it, okay? I played through it once. I did it on a stream over the course of 3 freaking months. Every week I was rusty coming back to it because I was playing all these other games in the middle of playing Lies of P. So like I said, my experience with it was a little bit different. Another problem I had with the game outside of this was the level design. It is not nearly as good as the Souls games. The stages are pretty much linear. It feels almost like you're playing through stages in a retro game, like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, their own little compartmented experiences. And they're very straightforward and predictable. There were many times that I was like, this bridge is gonna collapse when I walk across it, or there's gonna be a guy around that corner. And that's just part of getting good, as they say, with a Souls game. Like, you learn how to predict this to mitigate your chances of getting absolutely manhandled. The levels, they don't loop back on themselves very much like they do in Souls games. It's not like Dark Souls, where you start at like the top of an area and you just descend before hopping on an elevator and it just takes you back to an area and you're like, holy crap, that's what was up here? I had no idea that this elevator came back to this cliff above the starting area. And those sort of like interesting experiences with the level design in Dark Souls were pretty absent from Lies of P. And also one of my big complaints is that while the bosses are just as challenging as the Souls games, the general making your way through the levels in Lies of P isn't that difficult. There were only a handful of times I died in the entire game just exploring around or making my way to the boss. It felt like the difficulty there was a lot lower than a Souls game. So I wasn't expecting that either. I mean, it was a breath of fresh air, not for it to be so challenging, but it did make the game a little less tense and a little bit more boring, honestly. Not to say that Lies of P is boring, but it didn't feel like that real tense fear that you get when you're playing a Souls game, where you have that constant nagging that like something might jump out and ambush you at any second and you're gonna die and you're gonna lose all this progress and you struggled so hard to just make it this far, and can I just make it to the next bonfire? Can I please just make it? This isn't like that. I just like cut my way through everything and then would just get stuck on the various bosses. Speaking of which, the boss design in this game is really good. I was surprised by that, but it is not balanced. And it may be a skill thing between multiple people, but about half the bosses I beat on like my first or second try, no problem. And then some of the ones that everybody said were super easy, like the Black Rabbit freaking Brotherhood fights, I got stuck on those like for 30 times. It was a huge struggle. And everybody's like, I got it on my first try. I don't know why I couldn't. Something about fighting multiple enemies at once just like rattled my brain. I don't know, maybe I'm just a bad multitasker. I don't know. But I struggle with those. And then other people that I know are really good at Souls games were like, I was stuck on this boss for 2 weeks and I like knocked out on my first try and barely got hit. Who knows? Maybe this game is, the bosses are suited to different play styles. Maybe that's what it is. Your build is not necessarily feasible for every boss fight. Maybe it wants you to experiment. And maybe that's the reason I struggle with some of the boss fights, is because I didn't really have time to experiment on camera. My problem, not yours. Do not play Lies of P the way I did. If you've never played it before, and you're not a regular like daily live streamer, do not live stream this game for a couple of hours once a week over the course of several months. I was very burned out on it by the end, and it wasn't the game's fault. It was my fault. I ruined my own experience with the game. Not to say that I ruined it. I did enjoy it. If you think Lies of P is a 10 out of 10 game, you're right. If you think Lies of P is a 4 out of 10 game, you're also right. This game is very dependent on your personal experience with it. My personal experience with it, it was about a 7 out of 10. Very close to an 8 though.